We back.
I was just going to say that.
We here.
Welcome back, guys. Hey, how you feeling tonight?
Feeling pretty good, man. I've been wanting to get back on this podcast.
Yeah.
I know we missed a week, but last week, man, or really this week, last week was full of,
It was a lot going on. So busy.
Yeah, it was a lot going on, but it was like, for me, I feel like the day that we were supposed to pod was Sunday, and that was what happened. That's when Kobe Bryant died, and I was like, I can't even get on this mic right now. That was personal, very, very personal to me. So
first time I saw him shed a tear, first time.
Yeah. So we're back. We're
really happy to have you guys again. So the topic today is going to be 5 mistakes we made while single.
Yep.
But before we dive in, we have a verse that we would like to find, or I guess put this message on this foundation of this verse. That's Proverbs
28:13.
Whoever conceals his transgressions will not prosper, but he who confesses and forsakes them will obtain mercy.
Yeah.
So for us, y'all already know we're really big on transparency and being open and honest. And sometimes it's good to reflect, babe, on like things that you could have done differently in the past, areas that you went wrong, so you know not to do it, moving forward.
Not regretting them, but just understanding them and identifying them, basically.
Right, just being aware and confessing them, because honestly, guys, it sets you free, right? It sets you free. It doesn't do you any good to have any blinders on or just forget the mistakes from the past.
Yeah.
So let's get into it,
babe. Let's go.
Okay.
I like everything about you.
Welcome to the Just U&ME Podcast with Kelvin
and Bianca. Just U&ME Podcast was created specifically for young singles or couples who truly desire a love rooted in the faith-filled principles of Christ.
Join us in candid conversation and transparent insight on navigating life as a millennial couple.
Our prayer is that in joining alongside our unordinary yet extraordinary spirit-led journey,
you are encouraged to know that it is possible to have a union that honors Christ and produces authentic fruit. This is the Just U&ME Podcast. So y'all, like we said, welcome back. I know y'all missed us for a week. This is, episode 6?
6?
Yeah. 5 mistakes we made while single or, dating around or whatever. While growing up, basically.
Listen, were we ever really single, babe? Did you really have a single season
Babe, I had
in your single season?
Well,
you want to tell them the truth?
We're going to need a bigger boat.
I already know what life he was living. I know for me, babe, like I had like quote unquote faux single seasons.
Yeah.
I wasn't ever really like not talking to anybody except for like, a quick minute. But let's just, man, I think let's just start there, babe. Honestly, that for me was my biggest mistake when I was in my single season. I think that I made the mistake of idolizing relationships too much,
That happens.
And I just feel like that's part of why I ended up getting into relationships that I had no business being in. And let me not say relationships. Let me clarify, guys, because we already know how this generation is. Situationships, okay?
Yeah.
Situationships left and right, because I desired to be in a relationship so badly that I would ignore the red flags.
Yeah.
And that was my biggest thing there was I always wanted someone to be booed up with.
Yeah, definitely. I know me personally, I was always scared of commitment, but I always used the long-term, I told this to Bianca too. I always used the long-term game when it came to my situationships.
What do you mean?
Like I would basically, I don't want to just kind of what they say, hit it and quit it. I would stay around. I would, I would kind of boo them up in a sense.
Was it really booed up?
Yeah, I'll boo them up. I'll boo them up. And I ain't gonna lie to you, there was feelings on my end as well. It wasn't always like, I just never been a cold guy where it's just cold but it was almost like I knew, and I didn't tell them this, but I knew that I couldn't commit. And that was my biggest thing. I just knew I couldn't commit, but I never told them I knew I couldn't commit. And so it was almost like the relationship was always going to be not enough for me. So I always knew I couldn't commit, but I never told them that. So it wasn't like I was, purposely trying to mislead them or anything. It's just I always tried it out. But on the back of my mind, it's always like I knew that I couldn't commit.
You couldn't commit. Yeah. And then what was the point? Babe, please give us some insight.
How do you grow if you don't try? I know it sucks because we're humans and like you shouldn't treat humans like that.
Men do that all the time.
They do. But some men actually, no. I've had some friends where some men actually will tell the woman up front, and I think y'all prefer that, honestly. Will tell the woman, I don't want a relationship. Yeah. I just want sex and whatnot.
Give us the opportunity to choose. I mean, you know, women, y'all, sometimes you still just gonna be stupid and still just go with it.
But I think in the back of my mind, I wanted a relationship, though. I think I really did want a relationship. I just knew I couldn't commit. It was just something in me that is just like, I can't stay with the same person for so and so. Like, I can't stay with them for that long. You know what I'm saying?
So, baby, do you think then that you kind of idolized relationships kind of then too? Or was it idolizing sex?
Good question.
Which one was it?
Did I idolize sex? I don't know if I think I did. I ain't gonna lie to you, I did. And it was just, I think the mindset of a man, well, a boy at that time was just how much sex can you have? How many partners can you have sex with?
How many bodies can you rack up?
Yeah, definitely. I ain't gonna lie to you. I ain't gonna lie to y'all.
It's so different, babe, from like that, from honestly, from being a man to being a woman, because we're shamed for that type of like perspective of like, you know, let me just be free to just let it all out before this season, you know? And I mean, honestly, babe, that actually kind of too is like another one of my mistakes that I wish that I could take back, like prior to marriage, is I just wish that I would have like waited, you know, and almost not have also idolized sex in that retrospect where I'm giving myself to men who I know I ain't got no business being with. You know what I mean? Yeah. I wish I would have saved my purity, saved my body for you, honestly, you know, and have been able to enjoy that totally with you. You know, and again, not that it's a regret per se, but just something that if I could, like, if I'm telling our future daughters, babe, and our future sons, to encourage them to like hold on to, because it's such a pure thing in the confinements of marriage, you know?
Definitely, yeah. It's definitely very important. I know it was a while back, though, a couple years maybe, that I did regret having gave my body to so many different people. You know what I'm saying? Having so many partners. I wish I did have my virginity back, you know what I'm saying? So I can save it for that one person. My biggest thing is it's very important that you save your body for that one person when you get married. Like the soul ties and everything that you drag on with you, that you could even drag on with you into your marriage. It's very detrimental.
It's a real thing, because remember the very beginning of our relationship and our courtship, how I would always say that, like, because y'all, if you guys have listened to the previous episodes, you guys know a little bit about us by this time frame. You know, I was living my life, but he was really living his life, and I would always say that, like,
what period was this?
Hey, this was before, you know, before you took your personal vow of celibacy before me, and I always used to say, babe, that I wish that, like, from like the high school time onwards, that I could take back all of your partners, and it would just, the focus would just be like on me, you know? And then as we grew deeper into our courtship, you know, and now of course our marriage, it just became more and more evident, like every day, like, wow, like, what a gift it would be to give myself completely and totally to my husband, you know? So we
kind of just jumped into, that was number 3 for us on the list. But
I mean,
we'll just bounce that up to number 1.
Come on. I mean, because it's a big thing, babe. It's a huge thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge thing. So that was number 3. That was sex before marriage. But all right, so we're just gonna move that up to number 1. And now number 2 on our list basically is not understanding the real, well, for me personally, not understanding the real effects of porn. I feel like porn was introduced, well, it wasn't introduced to me. I stumbled on it, you know, at I don't know if it was a family friend's house or whatever, but I was like 14, maybe 13 years old when I stumbled upon porn, and I never really understood what it was doing to me. You know, I think it was one of those things that you don't understand that this has a real effect on you, and you're actually addicted to porn until you're trying to stop. It's just like kind of going on a diet or trying to lose weight. You're not, you know, you don't realize you're addicted to food until you're trying to stop eating that food, and you can't. You just find yourself at Chick-fil-A. You just find yourself in the drive-through at Chick-fil-A, and that was me with porn. I tried so hard to stop it, And I was like, dang, this is actually tough. You find yourself like, I don't know if B dealt with the same thing, but for me, it was just like one of those things. It's like, this is actually having an effect on my mind, on my body, on my relationship with Christ. I was always the type to feel like so guilty to come to Christ and admit to him, hey God, like, or hey Father, I sinned in this manner. You know, I sinned against myself, basically. With porn, is lust. The biggest thing is lust. You're having sex with yourself while you're looking at an image of another woman. So you're lusting over that woman and having sex with yourself. And so I never understood the kind of connection I was making with these women on a screen when I was watching porn. And that came into my life, in my real life. And I would, you know, try to do that with other women. You know what I'm saying? You try to do these things you see in porn. You think it's so cool. You think it's like, wow, dang, their body's like that. So now you start looking at women like they don't have this feature. They don't have that feature.
Come on, babe.
You know what I'm saying? And every woman you literally would, you know, walk by or something, you're checking for a feature that they would have that you would like. You know what I'm saying? So that was what porn did to me, basically.
So, babe, question. Do you think then with that mistake that it was such a detrimental mistake that it like affected then how you treated women in real life?
Definitely.
Like, and also to back up that question, do you feel like that is something that plagues a lot of men like right now? Because I feel like in this day and age, babe, more especially with social media, of course, it's digital age, babe, that you see all these Instagram coke bodies, et cetera, et cetera. But let's, at the root of it though, babe, I feel like it still boils down to that aspect of porn, having an unrealistic image and belief of what a woman should look like, you know? So do you feel like it affected how you treated women in that way?
It definitely did. It definitely did. I know with me specifically with porn, I think it just made me want a woman sexually before I wanted her emotionally or mentally or whatever it is. I wanted her sexually first, and that was on the top of my list rather than those other two things I mentioned. That's what a lot of men start to deal with when they are, you know, they grow up on porn or they watch porn for however many amount of years. They start looking at every relationship they get into or every woman they encounter, maybe at the club or whatever. You're thinking of, how am I going to be with this woman sexually before how am I going to be with her emotionally, mentally, however it is, you know what I'm saying? And that definitely affected. I think even that still affects men and women today, honestly, both people. But there's a lot of women out there who love porn, you know what I'm saying? Bianca was never that type of woman in my opinion, but there's a lot of women out there who love porn. And I know with men specifically, and in just being in the times we're in, everything is, you can't even scroll down Twitter, Instagram. I had to get off Twitter. I had to delete Twitter altogether. You can't scroll down Instagram or whatever without even the Explore page. The Explore page is the devil. I'm telling you right now, the Explore page is the devil, y'all, because you can't even scroll down the Explore page without seeing a woman just half naked or something like that. Even Shade Room, you can't scroll down Shade Room without seeing them doing some kind of Fashion Nova type of thing with a woman half naked. It's all over everywhere. You don't realize those little moments is building to that one moment where you do stumble and eventually watch porn, or where you do go out and look at this woman in a lustful manner. And the Bible, marriage, and the Bible does say that, you know, that you sin in your mind first before you even sin physically. When it comes to lust, whenever you look at a woman and visualize her naked or visualize her in a sexual manner, in a lustful manner, you have already sinned. I always grew up thinking that, you know, I am not sinned yet till I have watched porn or till I have masturbated or something like that. But you've already sinned when you've lusted over that woman.
Well, babe, I think like for me as a woman, and in this day and age, even growing up, like with knowing that, okay, for boys or for men, porn is something that's kind of like normalized in a sense. I think what I fell into the trap of as a woman, you know, like, again, you guys heard my first mistake was idolizing relationships, you know, and, you know, desiring to be loved so badly that I was giving myself to the wrong men. But I think touching back on this aspect of like porn and dealing with men who, because they had this ideal view of women, that I now, which is my number 2 mistake, I now always felt like, okay, mentally or emotionally, I may be quote unquote enough, but that physically I wasn't enough. that physically, okay, because I don't have a big behind or the widest hips in the world.
You got a big behind. How you got a big behind me? I don't know what you're talking about.
Listen, this is what you think, babe. But when I was growing up, when I was developing, babe, I was always, let me be real, very top heavy. Definitely, so I always felt like, okay, men clearly want women that look like this, like what you see in porn. Yeah. And I think that for me, it warped my mind, along with many other things, dealing with a lot of like verbal abuse when it came to my body, when it came to my weight growing up, and women, I know that you guys can relate to that very extensively. So dealing with that growing up, babe, and I always told that, okay, I was fat, that, my sister was the more prettier one, that, I wasn't beautiful, that my body, I needed to lose weight. I needed to watch what I was eating, that constantly being drilled in my head constantly over and over and over again, on top of now stepping outside of my, my family or my home, my community, and seeing that because men or boys came in with this view of what women should look like, that I fell short and I wasn't enough in that physical realm. Yeah. So if I could go back in time, babe, that's definitely my number 2, is that I would love myself more. Definitely. I would have dealt with my issues, babe, of, my self-image, my weight. And instead of trying to fix the symptom and not the root, i.e. instead of trying to, okay, I need to wear makeup like all day, every day, or I won't feel beautiful, instead of trying to cover it up in that realm, I would have just been more intentional about like loving myself, and loving myself physically, and really, really like pressing into my identity when it came to like, the Lord, he says that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and I just wish that I would have internalized that better before I became, especially now, like in marriage, babe, because you will know, of course, better than anybody else that like in the very beginning of us, babe, even before we got married, like in the very beginning of our courtship, I always felt super insecure around you, and physically, like I always felt like, okay, like Lord, and this is going to kind of spill into my, my number 4. So I'm gonna hold off on this point as to me thinking that I was perfect in every other area, but this area of my body, and it just made me I don't know, but I think it kind of put a stress and strain on you in a sense too, because, and you say it all the time now that like, I don't like when you talk bad about your body, you talk bad about, yourself, because then it's like almost a reflection of me. Like, how am I supposed to, I love you in and out, but how do you expect me to, it looks bad on me. Like I don't have good taste or something when you down yourself like that, but it all goes back to that, I just wish I would have, if I could turn back the hands of time, that I would have loved myself more like holistically. And I would have sewed into my body. I would have, really, really worked on that perspective and allow the Lord to heal me in that area when it came to my view of myself, so that I didn't make the mistake of bringing it, into what we have now,
Definitely. Yeah, babe. That's facts. I really, truly am an advocate of loving yourself first before you even try to get in a relationship. That's the problem that we have growing up or even in adulthood. Like we always feel like, let me get into this relationship and that's going to fix everything in me and whatnot. But in reality, you're not going to be happy in that relationship if you weren't happy by yourself.
Come on, babe.
You got to be happy with yourself. You got to love every single part of yourself before you can love somebody else. Before you expect somebody else to even love you, you got to love yourself first.
That's facts, babe. That's facts. No, do you feel like for your own sake, babe, or for your own, side of the fence, babe, do you feel like you loved yourself or you were comfortable with your identity prior to me coming along?
I was definitely, I would never admit it in real life, but no, I didn't love myself.
You admit it in real life now.
I admitted it to you, but not to anyone else. Yeah. I never, like, I always had a problem with what I felt like I looked like or my image or whatever. Like I always felt like I was just too like a barbarian, literally. Really? I always considered myself like a barbarian looking guy. Like I didn't know how to groom and all of this stuff. I was just brash, and stuff like that. But I think the biggest thing that caused that was, when I immigrated to America as a kid, I had this identity already that I was growing up in Nigeria and like the culture there and the people I was around, it was normal to me. So when I came here, especially in those permeable ages, 7 years old was when I came here. That's when you're like, dang, people talk differently here. People look differently here. And then bullying as well played a big part. I had some big old ears, y'all. Big old ears, a big head on my little body at the time. I got big. My kid gonna suffer with the ears. telling you.
But it fits now, baby.
But literally, that was my biggest thing. Like, even with bullying and all that stuff, that makes you like look down on yourself. Yeah. You always try to think, no, it doesn't affect, but it really does affect you. When you feel like people are viewing you a certain way, it affects you in the long run, definitely. And it's just one of those things you got to snatch up real quick. But you don't know that as a kid, you know what I'm saying? Man. So you eventually grow up, and then in high school and all that, I was always feeling like, y'all, no one even knew this, but I always wore this yellow undershirt that I would wear under. It just made me comfortable. I would wear it under my like top shirt, basically. It was almost like a wife beater to me, but I wore it under my undershirt, and that shirt just made me super comfortable and just made me even look more form fitting or whatever. And
so wait, you wore the short, babe, to look more
it was like a spandex shirt.
Oh, to suck
like,
you in?
Not to suck me in, just like it's just like, because I wasn't fat. I wasn't fat in high school or anything like that. It just made me like just feel
bulkier.
I don't know.
You lied to me, babe.
I don't know.
You lied to me.
I don't know.
You telling me that you put them shoulders on before you came out the house in the morning?
No, my shoulders was. I had some SpongeBob shoulders. No, babe. I had some natural. My physique was natural. The undershirt was just kind of something I had throughout my childhood to adulthood, and it fit. It was tight. But it fit. It was tight because I wore it as a kid too, all the way into high school, and it just made me very comfortable in my skin. It's one of those things where you like, it's like your parent hugging you. It kind of stimulates your parent hugging you, or babe, acceptance.
Guys,
no one lied to you, babe. No one lied to you. I don't know what you're talking about.
You're just so, babe. This is y'all side
secrets,
note,
babe. I had that basement. That basement now. Nobody's in
there. Pulling things out the basement, babe. Y'all side note. Let me tell you guys a story about how when we initially got married, guys, he had this one pillowcase. He had since child. I don't know why he has this affinity for certain things since childhood, babe. That stupid pillowcase. It had changed colors. It no longer was tan. We're not gonna cut this out. Y'all gonna hear this because that undershirt, babe, reminded me of that, like that needing that security in that pillowcase before I tossed it out, guys, because he was, he a little too old for that. But no, babe, that's real. Like I understand needing that, at least in part. On you so that you felt more comfortable in your identity, skin, like in your skin. And I feel like a lot of us deal with that. It's just universal, especially now, babe, in this, like in this generation now, and even younger than us, like Generation X's, the ones who are in elementary school, that all of this is pushed via every media stream of who you think your identity should be in, or who you think your identity should be. And it's confusing. So if it was confusing for us then, babe, how much more now? You know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, like how do you even learn to love yourself before you become one, or before you start to pursue becoming one with someone?
What you said was so just hard. Super important, but the whole finding your identity in someone else. When you see these celebrities online dressing, some, I ain't gonna name no names, but some of these female rappers that kind of dress half naked, I can see how a 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl is growing up and seeing that and be like, I want to be like that. So before you even know yourself, you're already saying, I am the stone, and something like that. Or I am party, man. So that's all I'm saying. It's very like it's so damaging if you're not able to grasp that concept soon enough to just love yourself. And there's a lot of people who have confidence, but it's a faux confidence. And when they're growing up, it's a super faux confidence.
That's the takeaway, because it's like, okay, if you don't know who you are, how do you wanting to be a Cardi B or to be a Megan Thee Stallion? Like, what are you? How do you love yourself if you're not able to actually love yourself, in that sense where you feel like it's necessary that you have to fulfill those type of personas from a young age to be worthy, to be valued by the world, and it's not to shame, of course, women who dress like that. Like, it's not to shame them at all. But at the end of the day, I always say to check your own intentions, like if it's one of those things where, like, how I know for me that I dealt with a lot, especially because of, what I dealt with growing up concerning my weight, babe. Like, there was one girl in school, I'm gonna tell you a quick story before we move on to the next point, that when there was a girl in school who, like, she was like, all the boys loved her, they loved her. And I see in hindsight that they loved her, babe, because of how promiscuous that she dressed, and again, not to shame her at all, but it was one of those things that because of the fact, listen, I ain't gonna say it on air, but tell me I don't know what you whispering over there, babe. I don't know what you whispering over there. Listen, he said, I'm gonna tell you off air. I'm gonna tell you off air, babe. But takeaway being that, like, she dressed promiscuous. So boys, of course, love that. And then she would take pictures, babe, and we'll post it on MySpace. This is when MySpace was popping, babe. Long before you, babe. When MySpace was popping, right? Yeah. So she posted on MySpace, and I found myself, because I wanted to be loved and valued by the boys who seemed to love and value her, even though they didn't. I would take photos of my bra too and post it on a kind of angle. Yeah, babe, on MySpace. On MySpace. Not many pictures though, of course, but I went through that stage, babe. And y'all, I will never forget the one time that there was just one boy in high school that, of course, everybody loved, that he messaged me, and he didn't say anything that was, that was for real fulfilling.
I'm
it was
grasping just the fact that the side of my seat right now. I'm trying to the story is.
Listen, he didn't say anything that was like fulfilling or anything. Yeah. It was just for the fact that he noticed me. Yeah. And I kid you not, babe, I was so excited this boy noticed me. I was maybe in 6th, 7th, maybe 8th grade. Babe, I got off the computer, was jumping on the bed. I was so happy to be noticed. Literally to be noticed, babe. See, as I tell this story, guys, it just brings me back to the main point of like, I wish I can go back in time and have loved myself, babe. Have been super confident in my identity before I got into, high school and towards the end of high school and college when I, grasped who I was. Yeah. And this actually, really actually leads into
point number 2.
Well, babe, we actually already talked about point number 2. Well, this is your point number 2. I think I said, guys, before that this loving myself was number 2. Yeah. But it was really number 3 because I said sex, idolizing relationships, and loving myself. Babe, yours was not understanding the real effects of porn and then sex before marriage. Yeah. So you got to get into your number 3 and then I'll get into my number 4.
Okay. So number 3.
Not prioritizing and cultivating your relationship with Christ. That's yours.
Number 3. Not prioritizing or cultivating my relationship with Christ. Yeah. I think during my single season, I never saw the importance of this because it was never really pushed upon me. Yeah. Growing up, my mom came to America and she was just grinding her literally just trying to grind and make a way for us here in this country. Yeah. So, even though she was a very religious woman, she really never pushed religion on us. Like we would have to go to church on Sunday and stuff like that, but we didn't have devos as a family or, quiet times as a family and stuff like that. So growing up, football was my God. So I literally just give all my attention and time to football. Even in college when I was playing football, I would just play football, come home, and I knew my relationship with God was not good, but I didn't really think it was that bad. Honestly, I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it was just a normal relationship because I didn't know the deeper side of things when it comes to my relationship with Christ. I didn't know the deeper sides. I just thought, I just go to church on Sundays. I pray to God here and there, and that's all that mattered. That's all. That's literally what I thought. I pray before football games, and that's it. Pray once or twice a week before I go to bed, and that's it. But I didn't really know if, I didn't really understand the true deep meaning of what Christ wanted when he wanted, when he said he wanted a relationship with us. I didn't know that. He when he said he wanted us to be his bride. I didn't know all those things, And so I think when I look back right now in hindsight, I wish I developed that relationship, that deep relationship with Christ, and put him in the forefront of all my being, literally.
Question, man, to play devil's advocate, because sometimes I hear this too, that like in reality, for instance, let me give like the example, babe, of like preachers' kids. You know how usually the stigma around preachers' kids is that, okay, because they're thrust into the church from an early age, they usually end up being wild, even if they do end up finding their way back to Christ again type thing, So in the case of like for you and I, who, we are not preachers' kids, and we even though like we may have known Christ from afar, and for me on a different end of the spectrum, babe, like as a side note, I always, because I grew up in a Pentecostal church, so so a church that spoke in tongues, very Holy Spirit filled, so I knew God, and God spoke to me he'd speak to me from a very young age. I knew who he was, I knew what he desired of me, and I knew for the most part who he had called me to be from maybe about the end of high school, freshman year of college. But my mistake was that because of the fact that, again, I was so caught up in the world that I lost sight of that, so I didn't cultivate my relationship with him to the depth that it could have been, if I would have stayed on that path. So to get back to my main question, babe, do you feel that if you were to have put him on the pedestal that you should have previously in your life, that you would have, i.e., like missed out on like the quote unquote fun or life you used to live previously, or even in this sense, babe, the fact that you are 24 years old and you were able to settle down at when did we, 22, that's not common. Yeah. Do you feel like it was because of the fact that you lived your life outside of God for a while, that was able to be possible, or that would have happened if you would have still had Christ there?
It's funny that you asked that, because I am a big believer in there's a reason for everything. Right. There's a plan that God already knows. And he, you know what I'm saying? That's why I feel like God, and it says it in scripture, God will, he'll always reveal himself to you. Yep. You'll always be able to find him, no matter if you live in the middle of nowhere in Africa, in the desert or something like that. You will always be able to find your way to God. And so I think with me, it was very important that I went through that stage. Even, with my commitment with B, even the mistakes that we made in the past with each other in high school, it was so important that I went through all that. And my relationship with Christ was, like I said, it wasn't as great as as it could have been, but I honestly believe that it was an important stage. It was a good stage to go through, because now I understand that importance with Christ and whatnot.
That's real, babe.
And even though that's why I even give the most glory right now, is because I know what Christ took me out of, and I know the grace that he's shown me for not even being able to have that relationship with him back then, and all the things he even gave me, and even all the things he even gave me, and he just showed me so much grace, and that's why I give the most glory.
You shouldn't be where you're at right now, babe. You should have at least a good 10 babies and be in jail already. Y'all, that's not a stigma for real, guys. He was on that track.
That was facts.
He loved you and graced you enough, babe, to bring you right to this point. That is 110% facts,
that's what literally goes through my mind when I cry, when I pray, and all that stuff. And I'm worshiping. It's literally, I should be a stigma. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all. This is a story for another day, but I should be a stigma.
Yeah, babe, that's real, babe. Well, I love that. Then again, babe, it's
not a stigma. Well, I said stigma.
It's a stigma. You should be a
statistic.
That's what it is. Statistic. Right. Well, babe, that's good. I think in that case that it not that it's a mistake, but it's something that in hindsight that would have been valuable to have maybe avoided some of those mistakes. But at the end of the day, because everything happens for a reason, the Lord knew that it was going to happen from the moment that he put you in your mom's womb. You know what I'm saying? So it's not really a mistake, but I get why it's a mistake.
Biggest teacher is life.
Yeah, exactly. Well, okay. So the next one then for me, babe, the next mistake, and this is actually my last one. He has 5 and I have 4 of them. Yeah. But for me, babe, I think that another one of my mistakes was thinking that, okay, although in the physical realm, I didn't love myself enough, as in my physical body, I think that I also made the mistake of not checking my other blind spots. As in, I thought that I was too perfect in every other area, and I came into, babe, our, courtship and relationship, for instance, thinking that I had no flaws, that my only flaw is my body. And, at that point, I had been losing a little weight, and, I was like, that ain't even really a flaw. But as for my mindset, my emotions, I thought I was perfect, and you were lucky to have me, and I didn't have no problems, and now literally was just a perfect woman for you, and I think that was a mistake for me that I wish that I would have gone back and have exercised and learned humility from the very beginning, because I think that would have helped me not only develop quicker into who I am now, where I don't care if I have $1 million and 30 degrees and a empire. I am no better than the person on the side of the street, because it could all be gone tomorrow. I'm not too big to scrub the ground or wash someone's feet. I'm not too big for that. But there was a time in my life where I felt like I was, and I feel like the enemy was really using accolades and using all the praise the world gave me for one thing or the other to boost my head up into thinking that I was above reproach, and I just wish that I could have gone back in time and humbled myself, so that I could have entered not only what me and you had, babe, but my relationships with other people, that I would have been too quick to cut people off, for instance, whenever they were, doing the most, or whenever they were, the friendship was too difficult. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then again, going back to your question, was it for a reason?
I mean, I think it definitely was for a reason, so it definitely was for a reason, but it's just one of those things where I believe, babe, that you can, yes, the Lord orchestrates things, he knew our end from the beginning, but there's a difference, there's a path where you can learn things via wisdom, and there's a path where you learn things via experience. And to me, babe, it's more so I would rather have taken the path of least resistance, which is learning things via wisdom versus having to experience, okay, like, you know, you think that you too big to do X, Y, Z, and this is why the Lord done humbled you to the ground the last 2 years. Sometimes I ask myself, like, okay, if I would have grasped this aspect of humility, would I have gone through some of the humbling experience that I've had to go through in this last, you know, season, for instance? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I know that everything happens for a reason.
You're the wise man. A smart man, you know, makes mistakes and learns from them, but a wise man that lets someone else make that mistake and learns from them.
Absolutely. I wish that I was that in that case, you know, because even for you, babe, you think that, and this is your number 4, that you think that, okay, you had to have been perfect. To be worthy of it. It was just on 2 ends of the spectrum, you know? Yeah. So I don't know. It's just something for me that I wish I just would have done better. I think it would have made me a better person at that time, because I'm thinking that I'm, you know, on the outside, I'm loving people, you know, I don't make issues with people, you know, I'm a lover, et cetera, but I know what I was thinking and feeling in my heart. Yeah. I know that in reality, I was at the throne of my heart, you know, and I loved them accolades and my head was big, you know what I'm saying?
And sometimes it takes someone else being in your life, like I was on a day-to-day basis.
Checked me
to see those things, because you ain't gonna see it yourself. Like I used to, every time we get in an argument, I told Bianca, you don't see these things, but I see them. You know what I'm saying? And just same thing with me. She sees things that I can't see in myself, because sometimes you just blinded by your own hubris.
Come on.
You know what I'm saying?
Babe,
so
come on.
That's definitely, but my end of it was the opposite, where I thought, you know, I wasn't perfect and I had to become perfect to be worthy of a relationship. And I think that even applies to God. Like I was starting to think when I was playing football in college, I was thinking I had to be perfect to be able to kind of lead my teammates. I was like, you know, I can't be smoking weed or doing all these things to literally, you know, be able to start preaching to my roommates, or, you know, talking about God to them. I was like, I got to lead by example first before I can even come to God. But God doesn't call the perfect. He calls the people who are selling sex for money, the people who are literally stealing in jail. Those are the people he called, because they're the most humble people eventually at the end of the day. So, but my thing with relationships, back to that, is that I believed I had to be perfect before I got in a relationship with any woman, and that made me make a lot of mistakes. Because I was starting to be relationship minded, and I was just like, I can't date anybody till I really had, you know, a good job, till I had a good degree.
I think, it's not a. You're not like, babe. You're like every other guy. It's a common thing amongst men that they feel like they have to have everything together before they end up taking up that aspect of commitment. You know, and even though there should be some foundational things that you have intact before you start trying to be yoked with anybody, but nobody is perfect. You know, and there's something, babe, that you even mentioned that really touched me, because having that mentality of thinking. And the same for me with thinking I was too perfect and too above reproach. But for you, thinking that you weren't good enough and worthy of a real relationship was the same way, like how you said that you approached God, you know, and how in the very beginning your relationship, at least when I came in, it was more so of, okay, like master servant. Like if I mess up, you know, I'm going through this depressed season, like how you were, I'm not good enough to lay at your feet. You know, I'm committing all these sins. I'm not good enough for that, you know? And I think for me, on another end of the spectrum, it was, you know, with my relationship with God, because I had blinders on to my other blind areas, I was like just too entitled in that retrospect, you know, that I didn't allow the Lord to check me on things that he needed to check me on. And I didn't allow close friends who he put into my life to do that without getting defensive or offended, you know. I didn't allow enough iron to sharpen iron, you know. And it wasn't until now, of course, in adulthood, that I realized that, okay, Lord, this is what you were trying to do at that time. You know what I mean? But it's just interesting how these negative perspectives, which is why, like, we started off with this verse, guys, of just bringing to light our transgressions, our mistakes, because they set you free, you know? And it's evident when you talk about these things, when you're open about these things, you start to see how, man, the enemy sometimes, babe, will be sowing all these negative thoughts and negative ideas and ways of thinking into your mind to deceive you from the true purpose and the true freedom, you know, and light and love that the Lord has for you, by trying to stop in your tracks, you know, and make you not come to him. And make
the first war starts in the mind.
Yes, you know? So it's just interesting to see in that retrospect.
But Going back to my point about feeling like I had to be perfect, I think that made me lose a lot of opportunities. I think with a lot of men, that can make you lose a lot of opportunities, relationships, and feeling like you're not worthy, or feeling like you just got to be great to be in a relationship first. But really, I think a relationship is meant to build each other. You're meant to find a lot of things out about each other. I don't think, even with God, I don't think anybody is meant to be perfect to be ready for even marriage, because marriage in itself is another stage, and you're not going to find out things that you're going to find out in marriage while you're dating or while you're courting. You know what I'm saying?
That's real, babe.
But I made a slurry of mistakes, feeling like I had to be perfect before I got in a relationship.
Yeah, babe. No, that's fact. I mean, I think it all boils down to like one of the biggest points that we made that we wish we could have gone back in time to solidify, that being our identity, and again, just how I'm like, man, the enemy, babe, will use some of these things to like condemn you almost, and that lack of feeling like words, like we touched on a lot of things, babe, from porn to idolizing relationships to not prioritizing relationship with Christ, not loving ourselves, not waiting until marriage, thinking that, you weren't perfect enough.
All of this ties back to biblical. This is all like biblical stuff, like that you realize in your life. All these things.
That the
besides this last one. But then this last one too. Let's go ahead.
Let's just go ahead and get to this last.
This last one too.
This
last one probably has a biblical tie. This one was me, all the way in
your number 5 mistake.
Was it 2017? In 2017, y'all.
I roll, guys. I roll. Irritating.
I was driving a beat up Honda Civic, 2004 Honda Civic, and boy, I did not want to date nobody, be around nobody, no woman. I was like, I cannot pick up any woman in this beat up Honda Civic. Lord. So I went, and I had good credit at the time, and I was working, and I was just like, let me go buy this 2017. It was brand spanking new, only like 100 miles I was on it, and it was a 2017 Dodge Challenger RT, and I was like, yeah, let me just go buy this car. Not thinking of, and like I didn't know anything about buying cars, buying anything, you know what I'm saying? So I just went in, put my credit up there, and it was like a low APR. It was like 4 point something. I was like, that sounds great. So I did that, and I think that was one of the biggest mistakes I made in my
buying a brand new Challenger.
I was
babe.
21.
Go ahead, say it.
I was 21 years old.
A brand new Challenger, thinking that
$37,000 car.
$37,000 car at 21, guys.
I had a good down payment. I had like $7,000 or $6,000 down payment, but I couldn't afford it, y'all. But I couldn't see that. That part of my brain didn't, the frontal lobe or whatever didn't all the way develop yet. So I was very impulsive in that decision, and I realized that, and y'all. That thing was it was
a challenge, babe. It was a challenge, y'all, in the very beginning, because I think, babe, identity, like I think that you were trying to tie that car, having a nice car, picking up nice girls, to you want it to be attached to your identity.
Going back to even another way that attaches to like a biblical stance is idolizing that car. Idolizing that car, and I literally I can't even say it ever again.
Idolized. Yep.
I idolized that Dodge Challenger, y'all. Literally, that thing was my baby.
Y'all,
I didn't care what it was.
Eat in it, guys. I had to open up the door carefully. Like, listen, take my shoes off. I entered the car. Like, it was a lot. It was.
But I had to learn that freaking lesson. I said, I told B this. We are never going to finance a car again. Everything that we buy from the future, guys, is going to be paid off.
It's not worth it, babe. It isn't worth it. I mean, of course, you're absolutely right, babe. It's one of those decisions that you made when you were younger, and I mean, I know a lot of men, like, women too, buy things that they just cannot afford, but why it was a mistake. And this is kind of, it could be my number 5 too, low key, just how, like, I wish that because of the fact that, for us now, babe, we are the ones that's making a way for our family, right? I wish that because being that our parents tried their very best, they, being immigrants to this country as well, didn't know how to properly manage money, didn't know how to properly, teach us how to be able to, not make impulsive buys like this, or to put ourselves in extraneous amounts of debt. So in hindsight,
school doesn't teach you that either.
And school doesn't teach you that either. It doesn't teach you that either. So I just kind of wish that, it was one of those things. I just think it's one of those things, babe, that like, you know, in hindsight, like I also wish that I would have learned how to more properly manage money, you know, to better set myself as a single on a good foundation, you know, entering marriage, and you too. So it's not that much, you know, undoing like how we had to do with this $37,000 car.
Let me go back to that.
Can y'all believe that?
Yeah, but everything happens for a reason, babe.
$37,000,
that's
babe.
a big $37,000. But God let that happen so I could learn when I was 21, so I don't make that mistake when I'm 41.
Come on,
you know what I'm saying? So we learned and we got out of that debt by the grace of God and the grace of my mother. we got out of that debt, and you know, and it happened for a reason, y'all. I don't regret it. I believe that had to happen. So
to go through it. That's real, babe.
You know, we got a little bonus one. I feel like this is very important for a lot of singles, people who are even dating. The whole marriage is the goal mindset, or the marriage is the finish line, or whatever mindset. That is it can be very harmful, y'all, because that's the mindset I kind of had, and a lot of people have, is that they feel like, you know, marriage is the finish line, and you know, I just got to make it to marriage and we're good and all that stuff. And a lot of people make that mistake and they end up in divorce because they feel like marriage is the finish line. But then they don't realize that when they get into the marriage, that's when the real work begins.
That's real, babe. That's
real. That's a mistake that I made, but I eventually got, you know, by God's grace, I was able to get rid of that mindset as soon as we started courting, because the honeymoon phase, y'all, it lasted a good
like 6 months.
Yeah.
Before we start realizing that, okay, it's like more to actually getting married. Like you have to actually learn how to be with someone. And that's kind of, babe, honestly, this was part of why we started this podcast, because we didn't want to, of course, push the agenda that marriage should be your ultimate goal in life. It should not. Like if that's a desire of your heart, okay, absolutely pray and be intentional about that desire and, you know, asking God to fulfill that desire. There's nothing wrong with it. But when it becomes your most prized possession, in a sense, as in fulfilling that, you know, check mark, or fulfilling that part of your life is your number one, then that in itself can become an idol. You know what I'm saying?
Marriage is only a stepping stone to where God really wants to take you. That marriage will only, you know, is supposed to really bring y'all together, so now y'all can team up together
and fulfill a greater purpose.
But trust me, that is not the finish line of God's plan. God did not say, hey, you know, guys are married now. Hey, that's it. All right, y'all take the rest of the way.
Yeah.
It's literally not. So, and goes back to that kind of example that I made a long time ago with the triangle. Get closer to God as y'all are making your way towards that top of that triangle where God is at. Y'all are getting, you know, close together. You know what I'm saying? Y'all are realizing all these things.
As you're getting close to God individually as one, you know, also be intentional too about sowing into other areas of your life, guys, whether that be your career, whether that be your personal passions. Like, do not get so caught up in the hustle and bustle of, oh, like I want to get married or I want to prepare for marriage that, you know, you forget to be intentional about, you know, sowing into the other critical areas of your life that need to also be producing fruit, you know? So that's definitely a huge like mistake. And I'm sure that I was also very much like I fell into that too, babe. Even prior to us, that I desired a you so badly, which, you know, was back to my initial point. A you, babe, so badly that I just, you know, I wasn't focused enough on the other areas of my life. And just by the grace of God, of course, everything ended up turning up fine. But man, babe, when you make that marriage aspect your destination, it just things can be neglected.
Y'all focus on yourself while you're single, even while y'all are still dating. Focus on yourself and building yourself so you can prepare yourself for marriage. And the other person is doing that. Y'all, you know, of course you got to think about each other, but y'all got to focus on yourself and build yourself up more and more and more every day.
Right. That's real, babe.
Definitely.
Well, that's all we got for you guys. We hope that this episode fed your spirit, got your minds thinking. Again, guys, back to that verse, Proverbs 28:13, that do not feel as if you have to conceal your transgressions or to conceal your mistakes to be able to prosper. No, it's the exact opposite, that transparency and honesty about where you went wrong in the past, being self-aware and evaluating where you went wrong in the past can only set you free and obtain the mercy that the Lord directly quotes in scripture. Okay, so we hope this encouraged you. But you got anything else you want to add?
No, man, that was it. I'm glad we were able to get back on this thing this week, y'all. I know y'all missed us, and we missed y'all last week as well. Too. So
yeah, guys. Oh, babe, last point, guys. We should have made this in the beginning, but y'all, our Valentine's Day giveaway. Please, we've had some great submissions thus far, but it's still open, guys. February February 9th,
Yes.
$100 to
$300.
It's $300 for
$100.
a couple or a single, you know, who the Lord places on our heart to give it to. We just want to give, you know, sow a seed into your life to have a really amazing Valentine's Day. Of course, within reason. All right. So yeah, guys, we love
Take that
y'all.
$100, go to Raise. You ain't never been raised in your life, go to Raise. Right? Was it where Raise on the River?
Raise on the River?
Go to Raise on the River with that $100. That's $100 night. I'm telling y'all. You're going to spend $100 on some lobster. Eat some lobster.
Letting people go.
We can spend $100 on some Waffle House, but they're going to spend $100 on some
lobster. We never spend. He exposing us, man. He exposing us.
I like everything about you.
Tune in next Monday for episode 7. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Follow us on Instagram at Just U&ME Podcast. Thanks for tuning into Just U&ME Podcast.